Welcome back to another edition of GTN Coach's Corner, where we answer your questions. Today, is junk food better than no food for recovery?
Yeah, is splitting your long run over 2 runs still a good idea?
Why do my forearms get sore when I'm doing a long run?
And is a sleeveless wetsuit a good idea?
Let's get straight into your questions. The first one from No Name. If I'm in a rush after a training session and I need to grab a snack to recover, if there are only unhealthy snacks available, am I better off not eating anything or grabbing any food I can? Well, interesting question actually, this one. Firstly, where are you in the world that there is absolutely no healthy food? Probably in America. Hey,
the answer is pretty definitive for this one. Essentially, you have a glycogen window post-exercise. Now, when I was growing up, they used to talk about this being 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's a bit longer than
that. It's a bit longer than that. And it's essentially to replenish the energy or the reserves that you've started to tap into through exercise, but also to start to aid in the recovery.
Yeah, and your body will use that energy that you give it immediately after training in that glycogen window to restore the stuff you just burned or the muscles you just damaged, rather than doing all the other things that your body has to do throughout the day. After about 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, it'll switch back to all the other things it needs to do. And then you've missed the window, which is why it's so important and why they always go on about you must eat something for recovery immediately after training, particularly hard training. And it's also, you need the right balance of stuff. That's why recovery shakes come in a 3-to-1 carb to protein or 4-to-1 carb to protein ratio. So you get a bit of protein to repair those muscles and the right carbs to replace all that muscle glycogen.
Yeah, now there are a couple of caveats, I guess, when it comes to this junk food snacks that you might be grabbing. So a really fatty snack that will take too long to absorb won't help too much.
Yeah, exactly. You also don't want a really salty snack like crisps or something, because you're possibly already a little bit dehydrated, and even if you aren't, that dehydration is not going to help your recovery very much.
Yeah, and then also the balance of the junk food versus sort of the healthier food and more nutritious food the rest of the day. You just want to be mindful of the total calories.
Yeah, you don't want to eat junk food immediately after a training session if it means you're going to eat less healthy food and not get enough vitamins, minerals, etc. throughout your day. But you should eat something immediately after training. And to answer the question, the answer is quite definitive. You are better off eating junk food than eating no food immediately after training, especially if you have another session coming up soonish that you're going to need to recover for.
And I guess the important bit here is the fact that you're asking this question suggests that you're mindful of the fact that you might have to be eating junk food every so often. And it sounds like it's probably once in a blue moon that you've got no food in the house or that's all you can grab. Therefore, it's not like you're doing it on a daily basis.
Yeah,
so,
a generally healthy eater who's concerned about it.
So, yes, absolutely. And I'll put my hands up quite often. I'm having to grab something maybe that is less than ideal, but that is far better in the long run than not at all.
Yeah, get that recovery in.
Cool. Next one from Giggle. A couple of times I've had to cut my planned long run of 18 kilometres in the morning short and ended up doing, for example, 9 kilometres in the morning, 9 kilometres after work. When I do this, my legs feel so much more fresh at the end of the day. On a purely physical level, does 9k plus 9k in zone 2 in a day have roughly the same effect as 18 kilometres zone 2? On a mental level, I do a lot of long runs throughout the year, so I don't really need to practice that part.
Well, I think the answer is right there. He kind of answered it for himself, because he said his legs don't feel as tired when he splits it up and does it as 2 separate runs. There you go. Your legs don't feel as tired because you haven't worked as hard. Now, aerobically, you are actually kind of getting the same fitness boost. You're getting the same amount of time with your heart rate raised. You're going to get those same aerobic benefits pretty much exactly. However, muscularly, skeletally, you're not getting to that point where you've drained your reserves and then you carry on running. So you're training your body to run tired. You're also not getting to the point where you've built up that impact for 9 kilometers and then you're carrying on running. So you're not getting that kind of impact resistance that your body's training for. So it's not exactly the same. And it is, I'm not going to say cheating, but it's sort of cheating your long run.
I mean, there's also the, as you get further into the run, form starts to fall apart. It's learning and reminding yourself to hold that form and fighting against that desire or urge for your body to sort of crumble and start to sit down. So those are all important. Also, as you've touched on the mental aspect, learning to endure that kind of mental side of persisting and pushing on through is quite big. But it sounds like you are doing that at points in your training, so that's great. So doing a 9K plus 9K, for example, isn't the end of the world. You're definitely still going to get training benefits from it. It's just making sure that you do also do those continuous runs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in fact, doing it occasionally is actually possibly a good thing, because you're getting those miles into your week at possibly a slightly higher intensity. You can run them slightly better and with slightly better form. So doing it occasionally is actually a pretty good thing. However, you don't want all your long runs to be split with a break in between where you can half recover and then go again, because that will pay the price for that later on. When you run in your race, you have to do the whole lot in one go. All right, on to our next one. C Pasco 89. Hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. I've been finding that on my long run, afterwards my forearms ache as if I've done a gym grip workout. Is this normal? I don't hold anything while I run. Well, I guess the question is, how hard are you holding the nothing when you run?
It's an interesting one. It's not common, but it shouldn't happen, but it is actually common. And actually, I've had this a few times from particularly cross-country races where it tends to be a bit cold, wearing a vest, and obviously running hard, and I'm probably tensing up a little bit too much. And I've got to the end, like, why are my arms hurting?
I think also
so
with cross-country races, though, you get this flood of lactic acid.
Yeah.
You're pumping up hills and stuff, and the lactic acid kind of pools in your forearms.
Yeah.
And I don't think
this is different.
Yeah, I don't think in a long, easy run, this is what you probably find is that this person's created a habit. So when they were initially thinking about their form, they were thinking, I need to hold my arms at 90 degrees, I need to keep them in the right place, I need to keep my hands like this, or however they hold their hands, and they've been holding them there like that, and this is how they run now. And it's become a habit where they have to hold it there, and they've tensed into that habit. And now that they've tensed into that habit, they're holding a lot more tension than they need to. Now, for this person, C. Pasco, it's their forearms. They're holding their forearms a little bit too tense when they run, when you kind of want to relax into it. For other people, it might be your shoulders that you clench. It might be your jaw that you clench while you're running. And you've got into this habit of holding it, and you need to actually consciously relax your upper body, your jaw, your shoulders, your forearms while you're running, so that you don't hold tension that you don't need to, because you don't need that tension in your upper body to run well.
Yeah, there's a couple of tricks you can do here. So one is holding something like a blade of grass between your thumb and your finger. It is weird, isn't it? Because you think by holding something, but actually, it just lighten that grip and and relax the arms. Another one that I actually do a lot, and I do it on most of my runs, because I do fall into trap, is slowly sort of shrugging my shoulders up, getting a little tense. So I drop my hands down by my side whilst I'm running, just let the arms flop and flail, and then just bring them back into the running motion and just nice and relaxed. And that just gets the shoulders relaxed, the arms nice and relaxed, and just
The point is to consciously relax anything that doesn't need to be tense when you're running, and you'll find that those forearms don't feel like they've done a massive workout. You've been climbing a mountain.
All right, final question from Emma Duzend. Hi all, thanks for all the helpful advice. I will be racing Roth in July 2024. Hey, congratulations on getting in. It will be my first full distance. Now I have a question about wetsuits. Mine feels quite restrictive around my shoulders compared to swimming without a wetsuit. My coach thinks the fit looks right, and I always try to pull it up as far as possible. My question is, would you recommend racing in a sleeveless wetsuit? Do you lose much time by going sleeveless? Would it be cold across 3.8 kilometers?
Well, okay, firstly, a wetsuit shouldn't be too restrictive. However, it is a layer of material over your shoulder. Even the best wetsuits with a really thin layer of material are still a layer of material over your shoulders. And when you're lifting them up, there is going to be a little bit of restriction there, and that does take a little bit of getting used to. These are very small muscles that need to lift your shoulder up, and the wetsuit is going to restrict that a little bit. However, you should get used to that after a few swims. And if you're not, you may want to address the fit of your wetsuit. There is a chance that your wetsuit is actually a bit too small.
Now it says that you're pulling it up fully. A lot of people underestimate how much you need to pull the wetsuit up. Any slight pull down on the shoulders, you are going to feel that when you're swimming, because you're essentially fighting against that elasticity that's trying to ping them back. Now, something I do, and I'm going to stand up, so I put one leg out to the side, so that frees up, and you've got a lot of give in the wetsuit there, and you can start to pull that up and into the shoulder, and that just frees it up really nicely. And
watch out for those fingernails. Yeah. But do make sure that you are in the right size wetsuit. It's really nice to squeeze into a tight wetsuit and really feel like a superhero when you stand on the start line. However, wetsuits can have a little bit of play in them. It's not the tightest possible thing you can squeeze yourself into. It needs to fit you correctly, not fit you as tightly as possible. So maybe try one size up, and if that feels better, that's the way to go. Obviously, you don't want water pooling inside it. You do want it tight, but you don't want it so tight that you feel like you've been squeezed into it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to look at.
And I'd always recommend a full wetsuit over a sleeveless wetsuit. Very few brands actually are sort of delivering and doing the sleeveless wetsuits, or have got as much R&D in those wetsuits because they are less popular these days. And with them, whilst they are pretty well sealed, you're going to get water seeping in through them. And also, whilst Roth is actually a particularly warm water because they can flood the canal and they get the temperature down, so it's a non-wetsuit. So you may get away with it in Roth, but you're investing in a wetsuit that you would probably want to use in future triathlons, and you're going to want sleeves in some of the future triathlons.
Yeah, a sleeveless suit is definitely colder, significantly colder than a sleeved suit. Yeah, so I think our advice is pretty definitive.
Yeah. Find
a sleeved suit that fits you well and doesn't restrict your shoulders, and you will be way better off than a sleeveless suit. Don't go sleeveless.
Well, thanks ever so much for all the questions. Keep them coming in using that hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. We'll see you next time.